into some stuff real quickly. I just a real quick funny story for you guys to start with. So as Kevin knows, our house is a little bit crazy. Our family's a little bit nuts, and things happen to us that you don't expect to happen to us in this world. So I was telling Kevin the story earlier. It's kind of nuts. So this is what happened. So I'm out walking with my son yesterday, trying to get him some exercise because he's been recovering from stuff, and we come across a woman walking a horse through our neighborhood, which is like not something you would normally expect. We're a suburban neighborhood. So there's a woman walking a horse, and I go up to her and I'm like, so, and then she had like this like thing on, looked like she maybe was a police officer or something like that, because she had this like reflective vest on. And I said, so what's going on? What are you doing in the neighborhood? And can I take a picture of your horse? It's kind of cool. And then she says, no, actually, I'm crossing the country with this horse. I'm the youngest woman. In 1919, I became the youngest woman to ever cross the country by foot, and this year I'm trying to do it with a horse. And so I'm like I left New Jersey, and so she's about like 190 miles in, I guess, and she's in Pennsylvania. She left New Jersey about a week ago, and working her way across with a horse, and she ended up in our neighborhood. And the horse was tired, and she was looking for a farm, and there was a farm that's near us, but I guess it closed down, and she didn't know it because she didn't have the most current things, and farms don't exactly keep on the current. So I said, hey, you want to stay with us? So she stayed with us, and she stayed in the backyard. She pitched a tent in our backyard, and the horse stayed in our backyard all night long. It was a blast. I mean, it was really the kids loved it. I mean, all the neighborhood kids came over to see the horse, feed the horse. It was really cool. It's there's a big horse overpopulation problem in the West right now. Like they are breeding like horses, and they're just crazy out there, and
they're breeding like cats and dogs.
Yeah, like horses. And so if you go out west now and you want yourself to get yourself a wild like Mustang horse, you can, and that's what she did. And she spent the last like 6 months breaking this horse. So this is a horse that's right off the plains. It was pretty cool. I mean, it was just So anyways, she's Gin and Faith is her website. So it's GINANDFAITH. It's her website, ginandfaith.com. And she is walking across the country with a horse now.
As opposed to gin and tonic,
right? Gin and Faith, and she's a good one. She's a good kid. We had Chinese food with her. We talked to her. Crazy stories about because I mean when you do this, like she's just like a kind of like a drifter, but in a really cool way.
It'll be easy to follow her along the road because the horse does leave things along the road.
Well, yeah, the horse left a lot in our backyard too, but she but to her credit, I mean, that's the first thing she's doing out there with a shovel, cleaning up everything after this horse. She was just a joy to have. So if you're somewhere across the country and you see this woman with a horse, invite her to stay with you because she's very pleasant. So she's going to end up in Oregon. She's heading towards Oregon.
One note here before we get started. Stu Cowan, who writes for the Montreal Gazette, posted last night that there were almost 15,000 fans in Quebec City for, I'm assuming it was a QMJHL game, playoff game. Meanwhile, in Arizona this year, it's not sure that they're even going to have full capacity for the 5,000 at Arizona State. That is a commentary on how stupid the situation is with Arizona. And not to say that they're going to move that team to Quebec City, but an area that wants hockey as opposed to an area that it's questionable whether they want hockey. That's all I have to say.
There you go. All right, here we go. Let's start this show. Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, June 2nd. Happy birthday to Captain EO out there of HockeyBuzz.com. Thursday, June 2nd, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we will start briefly with the game, and then we're going to talk about something else that I think is kind of cool, and then we're going to get into some rumors. So it's a 3-part show today. So let's start with the game because the one thing I wanted to note about this, I was getting all these texts from people. Oh, how is Tampa losing to the Rangers? Tampa, they're great. I can't believe the Rangers are winning this game. I got a text from our buddy Steve. I can't believe the Rangers are winning this game. And then we talked about this. I think when you were here yesterday, right after you left, or what was that? Tampa has lost a lot of game ones over the last couple of years in these series.
Yeah. Plus, they're just not the same team that they were when they won the Cups over the last
Yeah.
couple. I mean, you look at the points that they registered this season, and they've had a tough. It's been a tough fight for them in this postseason.
Yeah.
They beat a 115 point team, 122 point team. The Rangers has 110 points as well. I mean, if they somehow could come back and win this series, and I think that's debatable whether they could do that. If they could do that, they could end up facing, another 100-point team. Like, I don't remember a team having had to run this kind of gauntlet before.
I don't think there's ever been a 4-1. Any team has beaten 400-point teams. I don't.
Yeah, no, to win that.
No matter who they played in the East, it was going to be 3 100-point teams because everybody made the playoffs.
That's true, but
that's the actual point, Mike.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, this has been a strange year altogether. So
there's that disparity we've talked about. I think there's definitely a disparity right now in the NHL.
But that being said, their worst game in the Toronto series was Game 1. That was the game that Cooper said they didn't even show up. Made it easy on Toronto, and I mean, we talked about this yesterday, and it's well known in terms of, just when a team has a layoff of, longer than a week, there's always rust. And I mean, did they play well? I thought they played okay. I didn't think they played terribly. The Rangers were the better team last night. They had just come off Game 7 against Carolina. I think they were the sharper team, but I expect Tampa Bay to be sharp in Game 2 and be competitive. So we'll see.
Yeah, they'll be better, no doubt. And, the one thing that, even though I don't think they're even close to the team they were the last 2 seasons, just because their depth has been eroded, what still is there is that knowledge of how to win in these situations, of, how not to get overwhelmed by a single loss. And, certainly. But, I think Mike's assessment is right on. I thought Tampa Bay played fine, and just the Rangers were really good, and Shesterkin was good, and I did enjoy the Igor is better chant. To me, that's what sports is kind of all about. I really thought that was kind of fun. So
that is awesome. These are the two. I mean, these are the two premier goalies in Russia. Yeah. So it's really something to see. And Russia's the premier country in goaltending. So it's obvious that this is where you're at, right? So, yeah, I love the Igor chants. Igor, it's just a great name. It's a great name to chant. It totally has a different feel to it. It sounds wonderful being mocked by other teams. Like by other Igor. It's just like the perfect. It sounds like Eeyore. Like my son who's a Winnie the Pooh was like, are they chanting Eeyore? I'm like, yeah, it sounds like Eeyore. It's very true. It's it's kind of crazy. But I thought, well, I do think Cooper's I do think Vasilevsky didn't play his best game. I think that's the one thing that I think that Tampa played well, but Vasilevsky has a level that he didn't show in that game.
Yes, he can be better. He was weak in Game 1 against Toronto. I don't think he was weak yesterday. I just thought the Rangers had the better chances. I mean, there were 2 sequences that really, and they were both the Hedl goals. The Vetrano goal where he breaks up the 2-on-0 break, coming back and back checking, and then basically about a minute later he comes back the other way and scores. That made it 2-1. And then once I think it was Palat scored and tied it 2-2, the Rangers came right back down, and Hedl scored his first of 2 goals. And I'm in the car listening to the Tampa radio broadcast, and I swear Phil Esposito almost had a stroke because Hedl was left wide open by the Tampa defense, which is something that they normally don't do. Yeah. But that 4-2 goal, I don't remember Tampa Bay getting trapped in their zone for about a minute and a half, and it wasn't Zibanejad and Kreider. It was the kid line. It was Hedl, Kakko, and Lafreniere. And if that line performs like that, Tampa's in trouble because they don't have the third line to match up with that line anymore. Last year they did. This year they don't.
Well, that's what's slowly happening in this series, right? That line's becoming not a third line. Not just in the series, but in these playoffs. That's not a third line anymore at all. Like they are
Two second lines. They have two second.
Yeah, they're probably their second. I think they're the Rangers' second line clearly right now. Like, and then they, by the end of this run, they could be their first line. That line is crazy. Is just it's like we talked about with Edmonton when Edmonton was coming up and the Islanders, were falling backwards. It's sort of that's why I think this Rangers team has this so much growth still to happen, and yet here they are. They are that good.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that Mike raised this point. It's a really good one. When was the last time you saw the Lightning struggle to get the puck out of their zone like they did against the Rangers? And that one sequence that Mike mentioned was right on. Like, you're going, come on, you can't get the puck out of the zone.
Right. There were moments in the Toronto series where they struggled like that.
Not that much back. It was a minute and a half, and Adam Fox kept the puck in the zone twice. One time he jumped like a 7-foot center and kept it in, and then they cycled the puck and got it to Hedl for the goal. Yeah, I mean, and Kev, I think the thing that Tampa's got to worry about, and like I said, I picked them in 6. I think they can come back and win this series. They're not as good a team as they were the last couple of years, but they still have that championship pedigree. But if Artemi Panarin starts to score, and he started to score in this game in the third period, then you've got 3 lines you have to worry about, and that's tough.
Yeah, and that used to be the Lightning. I mean, last season, they're the team that had the third line that was really the second line or the fourth line.
Right.
And they don't have that anymore, and particularly with Braden Point being injured. I think they're certainly capable of coming back. The other point I would like to raise too is, he won the Norris Trophy, so it's not like we don't know who he is. But Adam Fox, Cale Makar has been getting all the attention. But, Adam Fox had reached 20 points in his career, his playoff career, in the second fastest time. Only Al McGinnis got to 20 points quicker than he did. Fox, it just generates points. Yeah, Makar is more dynamic, to be sure, but Fox, generates offense. There's no doubt about that.
And the point that Ray Ferraro made yesterday during the broadcast, I think, is pretty insightful. Makar he could be one of the best skaters in the league. He's lightning fast. Adam Fox is not. Adam Fox is a good skater, but he's not like Connor McDavid in terms of speed. It's his brain. He makes great decisions. I mean, he's a good skater. He maneuvers well, but his physical attributes are not like up there with guys like McDavid and Makar. He's just smart. He
reminds me of, which is I was always trying to find a person, and it's not a recent person, but it's somebody that we all know and remember. But I was trying to think who Adam Fox reminds me of, and it's actually Mark Howe. Like, I was looking when I was watching his game last night, I'm like, Mark Howe is a defenseman and Adam Fox, very similar styles, very similar games. Mark Howe was so incredibly smart in both ends of the ice. Was just a great player that people don't. Of course, he's way in the shadow of his father always, but Mark Howe was a hell of a defenseman.
Mark Howe played in the Olympics at 16 years old. I mean,
he was the best defenseman the Flyers ever had. He's the best defenseman in Flyers history, and one of the best.
Better than Pronger? I mean, Pronger was later in his career, but
I'd say Howe was better than Pronger. Yes,
okay.
I mean, Pronger had that one great year for sure, but I do think that Howe's had a great year too. Took the Flyers to 2 Stanley Cup Finals. So, I think that that's who he reminds me of, Fox. And I always loved the way Howe played. It's so smooth, not super fast, but so but fast enough, of course, and because of his ability to perceive where the play was going, he didn't need to be as fast as he had to be. Like, he was just there. He was always there.
The other thing that the Hockey Night in Canada broadcast picked up on, and something that we have to watch for the rest of the series, they picked up on Stamkos apparently being late to the bench for the first period and the second period, like he was getting treatment in the locker room before each period. It was unusual that it wasn't. He didn't come out with the team to the bench. He was always like a minute or so late. Now, he played really well, so it obviously isn't affecting him that much. But if it's something that will decompensate over the 7 game, if it's 7 games, then that's something to worry about, because Stamkos, I think, is probably right now arguably Tampa Bay's most threatening forward.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's move on past the games from last night and into a couple. So we'll do some rumors at the end, but Kevin pointed out something that really is interesting, and today is Gary Bettman's 70th birthday, and it's worth because Kevin has definitely spent a lot of time talking to and being around Gary. I've had 4 personal lunches with Gary Bettman myself, like to talk about this guy for a second. Like he is an interesting character, and what he's meant to hockey and how poorly he's been maligned, I think is worth discussion. And what he really has. I mean, Kevin, what is your opinion? Like, where would hockey be without Gary Bettman? Let me start with that.
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, you always have to start out by reminding yourselves that in general, leaders of sports leagues are always booed. They're always disliked. Right. Over time, they make a lot of decisions that alienate the fan bases. It's just inherent within the position. They're seen as the man, and nobody likes the man. Like that's, going back to the 1970s. Yes. You were always rebelling against the man. Yeah. But I think if you look at it realistically, and I think people blame him for the lost season, and maybe he does deserve the blame for that. I mean, it was his, calculation that he felt strongly that the league needed a salary cap in order to survive. They were a gate revenue driven league. And, he was up against Bob Goodenow, who dug in his heels and didn't want to have that. And, it cost an entire season. And, he certainly has to as far as the fan base is concerned, he's always going to be held responsible for that. But, he took this league to a much higher level. He turned it into a real business. Yeah. People have forgotten, but when I first started covering the league, nobody wanted to be associated with the NHL. Yeah. They had cartoonish style violence, the image of Slapshot, which we all think was a fun, entertaining movie. Well, but that was the true image of the league. Yeah. And after a while, in a short period of time, suddenly, a lot of big time companies wanted to be involved because what they realized is the demographics, and I think Bettman realized this right away coming over from the NBA, the demographics of the NHL is exactly what you want to sell to advertisers. They're young, they're higher income people oftentimes in some of the major cities. A lot of businessmen, and their season ticket base has more women than you see in other leagues as well. So it was a lot of good things, and they have really taken advantage of that. And also, Gary Bettman has hired innovative people. The outdoor games, have really kind of turned things around, and they've created different revenue streams that they certainly didn't have before. They've made it just far more professional. There's been some areas where they haven't made progress, and maybe it was impossible, but I think the officiating areas, they've tried real hard to try to make it better, but they've really not succeeded. It's the same struggles they've had for 100 years, really, in doing that. But in terms of expansion, the footprint has been expanded. Television is much better than it was. Yeah. The package deals they've had. He's made a lot of progress, and Mike brought up Arizona. That really seems to be the only area where Gary has really made that the hill that he wants to die on, and it's really been hard to imagine how long they've sort of held on there. Yeah, and I've always been a supporter of Arizona, but even I have sort of given up and raised my hands and said, like, what's going on there? So I think on balance, he's been terrific for the league, to be honest with you.
And I also think, everybody remembers he came over after being I think he was deputy commissioner under David Stern in the NBA, or assistant. And really, for hockey, he's had as much of an effect for the NHL in a positive way that David Stern had for the NBA. I mean, John Ziegler, I'm sorry, was a joke as a commissioner. Gil Stein I think he was the transition guy between Ziegler and Bettman. Bettman has done a fantastic job. Now there are obviously few hiccups here or there, the missed season, but I think in general the financial wherewithal of the league is benefited from the fact that they did get a salary cap, because I don't know how it really would have worked if you would have had 4 or 5 teams like we did before the salary cap, like say Toronto, Philly, New York, and a few others spending $100 million and other teams spending 20, and how financially feasible the league would have been having that be the case. So
remember when Ray Bork was trying to sign someplace, right? Where he went to Colorado and he ended up signing back in Colorado. But remember when Ray Bork was, and following that rumors at that time, this is pre-salary cap, all that stuff. And there were only, like you said, Mike, there were like 3 or 4 places that could afford him, they could go to. They were really, and it was pretty obvious. Like it was going to be Detroit, Philly, Colorado, New York. Pretty much that was it at the time, as I remember it, at least.
Yeah, but Bobby Holik signs with the Rangers for $9 million.
Yeah,
I mean,
Holik
was not a $9 million play.
To me, Bettman. The thing I think that people don't know about Bettman, I think is interesting, and is his personality and there's 2 things I want to talk about. One is personality, one is true skill. But let's start with his true skill. And his true skill has been corralling 32 very different owners, like just keeping them that this season that they had to cancel season in the NHL, that they had to do that, and he probably realized they had to do that. But that he got the owners to do that, like some of the owners who just didn't want anything to do with that, like in Boston and New York and Detroit and Philly, these places that just wanted nothing to do with a canceled season. Well, that he got them to go along with that was a real skill. Like that was a serious skill.
Part of being an effective commissioner, Kev, is to manage up. I mean,
for sure. No, you're right. You're right on in that, and he manages, as Eklund is pointing out, he manages to get everyone on the same page, and he's like a good lawyer. He figures out what the room temperature is. He picks his battles. He doesn't get involved in fights that he can't win. He knows the answers to the questions before he asks them of his owners. He's very good. When you really recognize how brilliant he is as a lawyer is when he writes the opinions, when he has to rule on arbitration things. And you get these briefs and you read it, and there's a wow factor to them. Because and then you realize, this is a guy that, had he not been involved in sports, probably could have been a good trial lawyer, or a superb trial lawyer, or some other thing as well. He's really brilliant. And the one thing that I think is important, and then I'll let you go because I'll let you talk about his personality, but is when will he quit?
Yeah.
And, I talked to him. Actually, it was at the in the Stanley Cup final. He meets with the media where he hangs out, and there's a little like a cocktail hour. And I always usually end up sitting with him. Gary walks into those and he doesn't recognize the reporters like he did years ago because there's a lot of newer ones. And he saw a guy that he'd known for a long time. Me and sat down, and he and I ended up talking for a long time. I told him, I said, I bet on you. And he said, what did you bet on me? And I said, I bet a guy that you are going to last longer than David Stern. You're going to that you won't retire before David Stern. David Stern retired at 71. And I said, I predicted you probably go 75. He goes, and he said to me, you made a very good bet. So I don't think he's not thinking about retirement. Like I think he's got Lou Lamoriello in him.
He has it.
See him for a long time.
And that is part of his personality, Kevin. It's a perfect transition because is that how much he actually does love the sport of hockey, which is something that people I don't think understand about him. When he talks to you, he talks directly to you. That's the other thing. It's really like people that are usually that important and that big or whatever. But like just me, a blogger at first, who he didn't know from Adam when he took me out to lunch the first time he took me out for lunch, like 12 years ago. He talked directly to me, and he spoke directly to me, and to this day he remembers my kids' names. He remembers all these. He remembers so many different things. I'm not sure what that sounded. Is someone drilling something at your house, Kevin?
No, it's my wife is mowing the lawn, and the windows are open, and so I can't run outside.
All good, all good. No, just we know what it is, so we don't think it's some
Right.
computer problem. So yeah, yeah, that's totally fine. But he'll talk right to you. When I was first time I was in his office, the guy has a life-size Stanley Cup built out of Legos, which is like really impressive, and the kind of thing that is very, very cool. And the other thing about him that you realize right away is how what he considers his competition, because he's got on these. If you walk into it, at the far end is his desk. The Legos is on the other side, and then along this wall right here are 3 TVs. And I looked very carefully, and they were set up to, when I was there, they were the MLB network, the NFL network, and the NBA network, the 3 other leagues. Like he is looking at the other leagues all the time, so he's watching what they're doing, which is something that the NHL didn't do before him. The NHL was just trying to survive itself. He sees himself as one of those with that other group. And I think that's important. And I think that's been something that has mattered, Kev, over the years.
Yeah, for sure. He's always been miscast as someone who didn't know the game as well. Yeah. And I've had many conversations with Gary Bettman about hockey, and he knows the game inside and out.
He does.
And, you talk to Coley Campbell, and he's watching hockey every night, and Coley Campbell has gotten many, many, many phone calls from Gary Bettman about what he has seen on the television.
Yeah.
He's on top of it. Like, he knows the game, and he knows who the top players are. I don't think he's you watch in the NFL, I'm drawing a blank, the commissioner Goodell, you watch him, and he hugs the guys that are being drafted on the stage, and I've seen him, like, he's always in the stands, and there's always an ex-player with him or an active player. Yeah. He's pretty personable in getting the guys. You're not going to see that from Gary Bettman. He's not that guy. He's not a warm and fuzzy guy. I'm not, it's not like he's not nice. He is. But I'm just saying, he just doesn't have that warm personality. So that doesn't help him either in terms of winning over the fans. He's had this kind of, it's not his feud, but from the, Canada versus Gary Bettman seems to have been.
That's what I wanted to talk about.
I was going to say, I think the perception that I have heard many a fan from Canada say he's not a real hockey fan. And that's one of the reasons why he was not popular in Canada. And then, when he moved Atlanta to Winnipeg, I think that sort of took away some of that, because that was definitely a pro-Canada move to move a team back to Canada.
I don't know if it took it away or not, but it did.
It took some of it away.
Maybe. He definitely has. There's also something that I don't want to get into, but there's an anti-Semitic thing about Gary Bettman as well. That there's no question that I've seen. And I actually talked to him about it briefly, but it's not something I want to get into or he would ever talk about. But it's just something that does exist. But the one thing he was really smart about with Canada was Bill Daly. Many things he was smart about, but hiring Bill Daly, and the NHL is very quick to point out that Bill Daly is part Canadian. That is something. He is,
but Canadians don't seem to know that.
I know, but the NHL will tell you all the time he is. But
I don't think it helped him as much as people think it did. So,
but I do think Bill Daly is more the personable side of Bettman. They're a very good cop, bad cop team, and they play that. They both know that part, and they both have the utter respect for each other. They really have incredible respect for each other. Like, there are times when during the lockout, I remember thinking, I'll be talking to Bill Daly about something and, thinking saying something, wow, can you believe Gary's like sticking to this thing? And he would never, ever, ever say bad word number one about anything Bettman was doing or saying or thinking. Like, he was always completely 100% behind him. And he and they definitely communicate about everything. And Daly, is sitting there, and I've often wondered how long Daly would stay in the NHL, because if Bettman's not retiring at some point, Daly, you would think he might jump in another league or something. He's got that kind of qualification, but here he is. He's still here. He's a lot younger than Gary. How old is Bill Daly? Do you think he's?
Well, the problem is that if he wants to get any time in as commissioner, he's going to have to go as long as Gary Bettman.
I know.
Yeah, because he's not a spring chicken.
He's 65, somewhere in there.
Oh, no. He's younger than that.
He's younger than that. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see, 64 58. He's 58.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So he's only 3 years younger than me. So yeah, I mean, I think that, but Daly has been good as far as getting, what Gary does with, like, for example, the trophies when you win the conference, and they send out Bill Daly to give that trophy out, right? That's something that's a smart little move. There's little subtle things he does like that are really good. That keeps Bill Daly in people's thoughts. Bill Daly goes on XM quite a bit and talks, In the beginning of XM, I don't know if you guys remember, Gary Bettman did a lot of show. Like, he actually had a show on XM, like, that was on like 2 or 3 times a week. It was like talk to
the commissioner or something like that.
Yeah, it was on there all the time, and he would answer it was not just questions about what's the deal with the shootout. It was like hockey questions. Like, do you think the Rangers can win with this kind of goaltending or whatever? And he would get right into it. Like, he would just launch right into it. And I also think the other thing that you have to know about Gary Bettman that makes him a great general manager is when you watch the NHL Network and you watch the people talking to the NHL Network, understand that Bettman is following that, of course, all the time. They're in the same building with him, right? Like, they're right there in the building with him. The NHL Network, at least they used to be, right? Are they still there above the NHL store?
No, they're out. There's a studio out.
Okay. Yeah, well, a couple of years ago they were in the same building right above the NHL store when they did their shows, and but obviously Bettman's, and they are not afraid to talk about just anything. They're not afraid to talk about a controversial play, like, and that comes from the fact that Bettman is not sitting there telling them to, like, toe the party line. He's not, and I always look at that, like, because teams often who employ writers, you can see writers afraid to talk about controversy within teams, but I've never seen any fear of any of these guys on the NHL Network about talking about something that, if this should have been a goal or this should have been a suspension. I never see that. And I think that is something that I think Bettman deserves some credit for, that, because just not getting involved with that and realizing what is important about that is an important thing.
Yeah. And I think he was, he had a willingness to dive right into what was sort of a new, area. Like, they went the first in it, but he was comfortable with the idea that the world was turning. Like, I remember, early in the Twitter process, the late Bernadette Mansour of the NHL, talking to me about the deep dive that the NHL was doing into Twitter and social media, and really being aggressive. And I think the progressive nature of, even though I think he's a conservative businessman in general, I think he's progressive in his, approach to marketing. Like, I think he's open-minded. Like, you come to him with a good idea to make money. I mean, look at, the outdoor games and the Winter Classic. And when those came to him, he jumped in. And they knew, I remember talking to some people, and they knew in the first one that they had a winning formula. They stood around in snow globe effect, and Bettman was on the field, and and they talked among each other, and they realized they had something going here.
Well, he was big and real. I remember when I talked to him, I was always wondering, why is this guy talking to a jerk like me? Like, I was always sitting there, like, when I'm talking to him, why would you talk to me? Like, what writers won't talk to me. I can't get Bruce Garriock to say boo to me, but I can get him to. So why would Gary Bettman talk to me? I remember this, and I realized at the time quickly it was because I represented the internet to him, and he wanted to learn everything he could about the internet. And it was because he was going to get. He realized the internet was important for hockey. He realized that the internet was a place where you could actually get your word out without having to compete against anything else, without having to compete against other sports. You could put stories out there that people who your fans were could read. And that was the internet to him. And, because before that it was, can we get a story? Are we going to get mentioned on Sports Center or what have you? Or else, how are we going to get our story out there to people? So yeah, he realized the internet right away. And I know he was talking to me to get the deal on the internet. I know that was clearly what he was talking to me about a lot. And we talked about the outdoor games, different things like that.
The other thing about him too, that I think is, kind of important to his personality is, he doesn't hold grudges. Like,
that's a very good point.
I remember that he didn't like a column that I wrote about, and it was about the decision to leave ESPN.
Yeah.
And he basically told me when he saw me, he said, you're wrong about that, Kevin. You're just wrong. This is why. And he explained it all. and I'll say, and I remember saying to him, I said, well, I appreciate you talking to me about it, but that was just my opinion. But
Yeah.
we'll see how it works out. Well, as it turned out, he was right. Everything to do. NBC was the right decision at the time. But he didn't stay with NBC. He moved on.
Right.
It's the world turns over. That was yesterday. We got to think about tomorrow. And he's doing it this way. And I would say that under first blush, the idea of splitting it up, having two, getting back to ESPN, bringing in a new element, I would say that's working out. We've seen some things here that everybody is appreciative of. I think the introduction of the between periods, similar to what we've seen in the NBA. That's working for him. Now, if I can just get him to embrace, the baseball style single game playoff, the little rat tail things. But he's opposed to that too. He's not for that. So
expanding the playoffs to 20 teams in a 32 team league there's no downside in terms of revenue. I don't get why, but that's
I mean. And then I've heard people say, well, if we do it, we'd have to go at least 3 games. Well, why? Baseball does it.
Right. No, you don't.
One football game decides a lot, in the NFL.
Baseball changed their playoff format this year, but what they're doing is it's a best of 3, but all 3 in the team that had the best record. So so it's best 2 out of 3, but say it's Yankees and Blue Jays, all 3 games are at Yankee Stadium. So there's an advantage. So, if you want to eliminate travel time, you could do something like that.
You're right, Mike. I mean, he does. He is. Some people have accused him of moving slowly. I don't think that's the case at all. I honestly think that considering what he's got to get, considering the people he's because what he is a representative of 32 owners. That is what he is in his head. And people have to remember that he's not the president of the NHL. He's the head of those owners. I mean, he is the president of the NHL, but that is really what the president of the NHL is. The NHL is the collection of 32 different groups of people who own teams, who have their own interests at heart. So he was smart in using you got them to take a year off. He got that whole thing to get the year off, but then he also was smart enough to be aggressive enough to get rid of things like the 2-line pass. After when we came back, things that would have taken a long time in the past to get rid of were gone pretty quickly because he sold. We have to make the game as exciting as possible because we missed a year, and that's so. And there were certain things that I mean, getting rid of the 2-line pass was worth missing a year for me.
I wouldn't go that far, but but I know your point's well taken.
You know what I mean? Looking back, that was a rule that no one wanted to change, and I never understood why. It was just it was one of those things that was completely baffling. It was the most confusing thing to explain to a girlfriend at a hockey.
All tradition act.
I told him it's the most confusing thing to explain to a girlfriend at a hockey game. It's got to go. What the 2-line pass is. But
no girl that I ever dated ever asked me about the 2-line pass.
No? Yeah,
no.
They dated really smart girls. They always want to know everything about everything. So I don't know what it was, but anyway, he has been, he is actually very close with certain owners, Kevin. That's another thing, and it's not the owners that you would expect, and we don't have to get into who he's close with, but it's not like the richest owners in the league always. It's a good cross section of the richest owners and some of the less well-off owners. He's got his guys on all levels, he's got his guys at all different levels, which is such a smart thing to do as well. So he hears what the wealthy teams are saying. He hears what the middle teams are saying. He hears what the teams that are struggling are saying all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying is he knows how to work a room. Yeah. And, he knows all, he's on a first name basis. He knows their wives' names. He knows, what's going on with them personally. He can carry on a conversation, and that's what you got to do. I mean, it's hard to herd the cats, and when you're trying to do that, you gotta play nice.
It's way beyond hard. I mean, anybody who's ever dealt with a really wealthy, I don't know if you ever. I've been fortunate, maybe or whatever, not fortunate to have worked in past for really, really wealthy people at times. And when you work with the really, really wealthy, the kind of people who, if they need a sandwich, would pay someone $500 if they would go get it right now, those kind of people are they think they're right about everything, because why wouldn't they? I mean, everything they've done in life has gotten to the point where they can say, here's $500, go get me a sandwich, So they think they're right. So when you have those kind of people who think they're right about everything, 32 of them, that's not easy. That's just like, holy cow. I mean, he's very good at making little deals. Like, I still to this day think the trapezoid's there to get Ed Snyder to agree to skip a year. That things like, because Ed wanted the trapezoid gone because of Brodeur. There's certain things that, these are just like conspiracy theories, of course, but they're always the kind of thing that, like, this is the kind of deal he would make. And I know we talked a lot about him, but the last thing I want to say about him, I think we need to discuss, is what people in the NHL most associated with him, which is the booing when he gives out the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And that is one of the craziest things to me. And his attitude towards it is so different than you would probably imagine.
He considers it applause, Zach.
He loves it. And legitimately. And because I one time said to him, I was there one game before the game, and I said, hey, you might. And I ran him in the back, and he's like, hey, how you doing? And he asked me about my kids, like he always does. And I said, great. And I said, it's a nice night. You might go out there and get booed. Why do you do it? I'm like, why do you go out there and let your stuff? Why do you want to? He's like, because it's my job to get out there and hand this cup to somebody. Like that.
Yeah. I don't know that he enjoys it, but I think what he has learned to deal with it. He's learned to be funny with it, and he's learned to accept it. It happens at the drafts too, and to be honest with you, it's annoying to me because oftentimes I'm interested in what he has to say, and people just trying to drown it out, and generally, it's almost stupid because generally he's saying nice things about the city. when it's happening,
right?
So,
great fans,
yeah, these great fans and this great city of Philadelphia, boo, boo. and then he says, I remember one time, I believe it was in Philly, didn't he say, "Is that all you got?"
Yeah, at the draft. He went out there for his first introduction and was shocked at how little he was booed.
Right? Is that all you got?
So like a New Yorker coming out to Philly really expected more.
Yeah. So, but I think he's going to be around a while, and I think I'll tell you for sure that the owners are happy he's around.
They love him. I mean, there are of course ones who won't say they love him, but it's hard to deny when you're an owner at the bottom line. The bottom line, what he's been for them, it's hard to really go past.
Yeah. There are teams that I happen to live in a city where. He's was never the favorite of the ownership here because of they felt he played with their division status and their conference status, and they were pleased. But most owners find him to have been very, very good for the league. Yeah, they do. And I mean, even Ed Snyder, who I was lucky enough to hang around quite a bit. And I was in the room one time. I've mentioned this story before, but it's really worth repeating. I was in the room one time when Ed Snyder was given the amount of money he had to send to Nashville for revenue sharing. I was there when this happened because we were working on the television show that I was going to do that I did a year of called FlyerBuzz TV, and I'm there and I saw how angry he was at that and how he cursed out everybody because I'm a self-made man. I had nothing. I did nothing. I created this out of nothing. No one gave me any help. I built this stadium. I didn't get money from the city. And he's right about everything he said. He didn't have anything. But in order for the league to succeed at the level he wanted it to, teams like Nashville had to be in it. And he eventually, you could see he came around to that, and Bettman had convinced him that was okay. And Bettman and him were pretty close. They did get along. I mean, they really did.
Before we get into the rumors, just because game 2 of Edmonton, Colorado's tonight, and it's come out that at the morning skate, Kemper was not on the ice. It was both Francouz and Julius Ahanen as their third stringer. So that the curse of Mike has come to pass finally. Goal. He was always injured. Yeah, Darcy Kemper. Hey, there he is. He is injured. You're right. Now, Francouz played very well, but this is something that bears watching because if Edmonton does have a chance in the series, maybe the goaltending of Colorado stepping down a bit. Now, Kemper Kemper's been dealing, and they're indicating that it could be blurred vision from the eye injury that he had against Nashville in the first round. So, this, like I said, it's something that could be a factor. I mean, if they stop scoring and Edmonton continues to score at the rate that they were, then obviously it's going to be a problem. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, Kemper is. I'm actually a Francouz guy. I do like him a lot. I think that he's, I know people have Dixon amount. He gets hurt quite a bit. I know as well, but when he's healthy, I do think he might be a stronger goalie than Darcy Kemper. And
I don't know what to say, folks.
I don't either, because I just didn't even know Francouz. I can't even say his name. That he even has guys, and so you're one of them.
Yeah,
I'm a Francouz guy. I am.
I'm a big Michael Hutchinson fan.
There's something about his game that I like, and there's certain goalies I watch him up right away.
I'm just sitting here trying to figure out how I can get a job fetching sandwiches for $500. So
it's absolutely true. I mean, the DoorDash thing was such a brilliant thing because it could have existed. I mean, for some of the wealthy, they've wanted that forever. Just bring me everything to my house, Okay, so that's. I mean, we're gonna see some interest. We'll probably see Francouz tonight. I guess that's what that means.
Yeah, no, it's definite.
I mean, yes, there you have it. It could be a game changer. We'll see. All right, let's get into some rumors because it's starting to really pick up, and I spent a lot of time in the last couple of days talking to various people, and here's what we got. So I'm going to bring up some of the rumor chart here, just a little bit of it, and then we'll go through a couple of these players and get your opinions on this one as well. So here's the rumor chart, as I've said many times before, and I'll say it again, is really where I get where I put my opinions out. When I post blogs, I post just rumors that I hear. I don't always agree with them. I'm like many of you guys. I'm like, how the hell can this happen in a cap space world? But the rumor chart, but I just put them out there because that's what I heard, and it's not my job to tell you that it's right or wrong. Just my job to tell you what I heard. This for me personally is what I feel, like what I sense from what I've heard. And so this is taking what I heard into account, plus my own forms of logic, plus maybe some other things that are off the record, plus other people's input, and as well, and Kevin's input too, and all the people who I hear from Hockey Buzz who when they hear something, we take all this into account and we put this together. So let's start with Vincent Trocheck, Kevin, because he's an interesting player. I mean, and what are your thoughts on this Pittsburgh?
Well, I mean, I do think he is an attractive player for multiple reasons. He's a two-way center. He has just enough offense to be a top six performer, but he does much more. He's good in the face-off circle. He can check. He's got some feistiness to him, and most importantly, he's not going to cost you $8 million.
Right.
And I think that's crucial this time. Like, to me, he's the guy just below the big centers in the class. Obviously, I'm talking about Giroux and Evgeny Malkin if he comes out. And Kadri. But I think Kadri's right below, even though Giroux and Malkin, just in terms of pedigree. He comes with a little bit of baggage. So I would rank them. Kadri would be third and Trocheck would be fourth. But and I think Carolina would like to sign him. I think he likes it there. He appreciates his role. So it'll come down to money, like how much are they willing to pay him to do there. If I had to guess, I think it's 50-50. We got 55-45, but anyway, I mean, it's right in there. And of course, Penguins, if Malkin goes away, they're going to want a high performance center. And, they probably, unless Giroux gives a discount, aren't going to be able to afford him. And with that leaves aside too, all the baggage that would come from him, loving being a Flyer and going to the Penguins. So we'll leave that. So, but
he does love Sidney Crosby. Those guys are tight. So that's something I could say.
The one unsaid thing here about Trocheck is he's from Pittsburgh.
Well, not really. He was born there.
Right.
Yeah, but he ended up. Well, I mean, he is. But he played hockey in Detroit.
Right.
I think he was 12 or 13 there. So, like, I almost feel like the people in Detroit claim him. I don't know. Maybe Pittsburgh does too. It's always confusing, and when guys are young and they play in different cities.
But both of these teams, both Carolina and Pittsburgh, have cap issues, and it's a question of whether, obviously, if Pittsburgh signs Malkin, then you would think with Crosby, Malkin, and Carter up the middle, then they're taken care of. But if Malkin goes someplace else, then it opens it up wide open for the possibility of a Trocheck, and that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I will say, though, I don't believe that. Yeah, maybe you're right, Kevin. Maybe you've been told something from people in the league, and I would yield to that. But Nazem Kadri doesn't believe he'll make the least of those three because he's 32 years old, as opposed to Giroux being older and Malkin being older and having the injury history that he has. I mean, I think Kadri's probably going to get the longest term of the three of them. Maybe not as much AAV, but in terms
I don't know. I think we have a misunderstanding. I rank him in terms of their importance. I have Giroux and him, but I think he'll get the most money.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Both those guys are going to probably give a little bit of a discount because they're older.
Right.
I do think the one thing with Kadri that I've heard people say is they, as opposed to Giroux and even Malkin to an extent, even though Malkin's always been under the wing of Crosby to a degree, Kadri's never been the guy.
No, he's a number two center.
Number two, and Malkin's a number two, but we all kind of agree that he could be a number one.
He's a co-number one, yeah.
So I think but now Johnny Gaudreau, I have Philly at 30.
One thing about Trocheck, just let me throw out there, because the Red Wings are specifically looking for a number two center.
Okay.
Specifically looking for a number two center. That's an Eisenman type of guy.
Right.
Okay. Especially the little spit to go with the polish.
And he's somebody that he knows well because he played in the same division as Tampa and played in Florida, so he knows him pretty well.
Yeah, and again, the Detroit connection. He played his junior hockey there. Played, even before he got to the juniors, the Bantams and stuff. He's a Detroit. A lot of Detroit players know him very well.
Interesting. All right, we'll have to put Detroit into the mix on that for sure. Gaudreau, a lot of people are telling me about the Flyers bet 30%, and the reason, and I know salary cap wise, we have no idea how that can happen, because it's going to be a $10 million player. But I was told very specifically from a source that has never lied to me, one of my best sources in Philly and one of my best cities, that was their target, and I was told this way long time. I wrote about it way back in December. That Gaudreau was their guy, they were going hard after Gaudreau, and usually when they say that, they do.
I'm not disputing that, and I'm not disputing the 30%. The thing that shocks me here is the lack of the New Jersey Devils being on the list, and Ottawa being at 20%. When with their ownership situation, I don't know if they're bidding on anybody other than to get to the cap floor.
No, I definitely have heard Ottawa. There's no question about that. And with Forsberg too. They are, you're right about their ownership situation, and Giroux with Ottawa as well. So there's a lot of
I don't see him going there though. Do you, Mike?
No, I don't. I think he's going to the Northeast. I don't know how the Islanders could afford it or the Rangers could afford it, but the Devils and the Flyers, I definitely think would be in on it, and maybe a couple other teams that have need for a score. I mean, he's going to cost a ton. He scored 115 or 112 points or something like that. You're talking about $9.5 million a year at least.
Yeah. I mean, I think that will be. I mean, I tried to put New Jersey on there, Mike. New Jersey wasn't there with him before, like a week ago, I think, even. But I talking to my people in New Jersey, that wasn't where they were focusing themselves. So, we could see Philip Forsberg, more of a desire, Kevin, to stay in Nashville probably than Gaudreau in Calgary.
Yeah, for sure, a little bit. Like Gaudreau is, the fans there have been tough on him. Contrast that to Nashville, where they love Forsberg. And in fact, there's people, if he leaves town, they're going to blame David Poile. He's very well liked there. He's been a very consistent goal scorer there. He scored a lot of goals. And they're a team that, they're not an overpowering offensive team, so they need their goals. So it'd be a terrible loss for them. But the thing that has to worry you if you're a Predator fan is like, it's not like these two sides don't, they know where
right.
where the compromise is. Like, this is not like a big secret. Why isn't it done yet? So they're playing chicken. It's pretty scary if you're the Predators, I think. I don't think it's scary from Forsberg's perspective.
No, and the Preds right now going into the summer, they have $24 million in cap space, but they're a budget team, so that amount doesn't really factor in here. I wonder, Kev, whether them getting him signed, and the rumors are out there that he wants at least what Roman Josi is making, which is a little over $9 million, whether it's contingent on them finding a buyer for one of the, Duchesne or Johansson, moving one out to keep Forsberg in.
I don't think so. Even though they have been a budget team, I think they go to the cap now. So I think, they've got other needs. They have pretty much indicated that they're going to get a top four defenseman. So they got to save some money for that. They've got a few guys to sign. I think all said and done, they have enough money to sign Forsberg at $9 million. I think they just don't want it. They want it, don't want to move beyond. Like he's it's the Josi ceiling. And I don't know, like that's just the hockey tradition. Malkin makes more money than Crosby because Crosby ended up signing before Malkin did. Like that's just what happens. If you buy a new car last year and then you buy one this year, you're going to pay more.
Oh, I can tell you that's true. I'm trying to lease a car right now, and it's horrendous.
And the other factor is supposedly the same thing that was a factor with Josi, which was the no-move clause, and he's the only one that they've ever given the no-move clause to, and reportedly Forsberg wants that as well. So it's a slippery slope. All of a sudden, you've already set the precedent that you will give it to somebody. And Forsberg saying, "Okay, we'll give it to me too." And if that's something, he wants security. I don't blame him that he wants.
Well, security. And I'm sure he's saying, I'm every bit as valuable as Josi. I mean, we could debate that. If I would say Yosi's more valuable because he plays more minutes. He's, the defense, he's the captain, and so forth. But Forsberg, his consistency has really been impressive. He scores goals, so.
Although he's been streaky, and the streaky scoring is where he's been down like that.
But most good goalies are, don't you think? Good goal scorers are, don't you think? Streaky.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I think his streakiness has been accentuated by the fact that this team goes cold all together. Like they, Duchesne, Johansson, and Forsberg tend to all go cold at the same time, always. And that they really, when they can't score, they can't score. The Predators, when they go into can't scoring mode.
Yeah, but for the most part, I think goal scorers, they don't score every other game and then get to 40. If they're a 40-goal scorer, they get 10 and 12 games, and then they go no goals in 8 games, and then they get 4 and 5, and so. But his totals, and I don't have them in front of me, have been
his season totals are consistent.
Pretty consistent.
They really are. Now, remember, Duchesne sort of had the same kind of issue a little bit in when McKinnon signed in Colorado, and like the whole concept of like Duchesne was making the most money. I think if I remember, there was some kind of thing about this.
Well, no, it was the fact that it was McKinnon, Duchesne, and O'Reilly. And O'Reilly, with him, it was like there was the offer sheet that Calgary signed him to, and O'Reilly was always third in terms of getting paid. And then they ended up trading O'Reilly to Buffalo, and then eventually ended up trading Duchesne when Duchesne, I think, only had a year left in his contract. So they traded him as a rental.
Definitely worry about Duchesne because of just he has been so hard. It was so terrible in Nashville until last year, and Johansson is terrible.
Well, one of the interesting things about Duchesne, I was talking to some Predators people, and they brought up that one of the big differences for him was playing on the wing. That there's less pressure playing on the wing, and your job requirements are not as expansive as they are when you're trying to play center. And he seemed to thrive.
Less defensive responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And finally, Kevin Fiala on this list before we get out of here. Fiala is a really interesting case. Talking to my buddy in Dan, who covers the Wild and has really, I think, has a pretty good feel for them. His concept about Fiala, because we all know that the money is the issue, the salary cap hell that's coming. Like, they're trying to do the Shea Weber deal. Probably
It's not coming. It's already there.
Yeah, right. So will they be the one, or like Kevin, we talked earlier, the Shea Weber deal is becoming something that Montreal is going to make out like incredibly well on. It feels like, because there are so many teams that want to do that.
Yeah, there are multiple teams. I don't know that it's a large collection, but there are more than one team that wants to take that thing, and they want a lot for it. So you're going to have to give up a pretty valuable asset in order to make that work. So
I think I don't buy like the Fiala to New Jersey rumors that were coming out earlier very much. I do believe that Guerin loves Fiala. I've heard this, and I really do think that he has probably figured out in the back of his head a worst case scenario way to sign Fiala.
Well, I mean, first, this is not something that may get resolved by the draft, because he's 1 year away from being a UFA, so he's an RFA with ARB rights. They can qualify him, so that protects them from. And then they set the arbitration hearing. But the problem is with their cap situation, they will have to either move him or decide to keep him before the or reach an accommodation with him on a 1 year deal before the arbitration hearing. Because, if I can't see them walking away from a guy who scored 85 points. So they're going to have to make a decision one way or the other before the hearing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think right now that they're just trying to figure out who's got to go to save him, so. I'm sure that is, although, I think they'll explore their trade options, because, you don't know,
Yeah.
Well, the guy I looked at the Minnesota roster, and the guy that made the most sense to move, although it doesn't buy them a lot of time, it buys them a year, is Matt Dumba. Because Dumba's UFA after next season. He's making $6 million. So, if you decide to sign Fiala to a long-term extension, it buys you a year. But the problem is the overwhelming thing is that that penalty for Suter and Parise is it's $12 million in dead cap space for next year, and then 14 for the next 2 years. So
for sure.
They have to. It's either Weber or some other really, if Carey Price decides he's going to retire because he can't play anymore because of his knee, then that might be another contract that they can bring in a $10.5 million coupon for 3 years.
I mean, Dumba is a big time lightning rod out there among the fans. Like, I've talked to people about that. Like, there are people who love him, there are people that hate him. He gets blamed for everything that goes wrong sometimes by the people who say he's like, I like Dumba, and then he's controversial with kneeling for national anthems. There's a whole bunch of things that go with him like that in Minnesota that really he's a lightning rod for sure.
He's a talented, good skating, physical, right-handed defense.
Yeah.
You can find a taker for him.
You can find a taker for him if they decide to go that way. But Guerin loves him. That's what I've been told. So like the reality is like that's is Sturgeon a better way to go for them? There's other things that that they could possibly look into. I mean. Well, the thing about this, Kevin, is the concept of Nashville perhaps getting back in on Fiala if they lose Forsberg.
Yeah, I mean they need a guy like Fiala. They gave him up, but they need more points. They need offense. They need help. One of the mandates is to prove second line scoring. If you accept that they're going to keep Forsberg, they want to bring someone else in to give that second line. But one point about Minnesota that should be stated: if they could turn back the clock, the Wild would still buy out. Like they're not even in the least bit unhappy that they did this, and they're facing that now. So they knew what they were getting into, and they were happy to do it.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with them, honestly, but it's going to be very difficult for them cap wise. I mean, team wise, It changed the locker room. It changed the whole vibe of that team. This was a team that, talking to people around the Wild, this past Wild team was the favorite Wild team of a lot of people in that world.
Yeah.
They love this team. This team.
Yeah, I was told that the players there have said and told management, you just can't believe the difference.
Yeah.
In the dressing room, the attitudes, like everything is just better now.
And if you look at their roster, anybody who's making significant salary, they don't want to move Kaprizov. They don't want to move Zuccarello or Eriksson Ek. They don't want to move Spurgeon or Brodin. Maybe Cam Talbot if they find another goaltender, but the other goaltender is going to cost them money. So anybody who's making significant salary is not going anywhere. They don't want to move them.
Right, that's very true. Eriksson Ek is a guy who's just about to come into his own too in a big way. You can see it when he plays. So he's already a really solid player, but you can really see that he's going to be a force. Now, Vince in our chat room says Mike Rousseau covers the Wild. Said the Wild are 100% treating Fiala. That Guerin also dumped on Fiala in an interview with him while praising Dumba.
It would be surprising if he dumped on Fiala when he's trying to trade him. That makes a lot of sense. There's an asset, but let me tell you how much he sucks. I'm not doubting. That's what Vince maybe heard.
I know.
I imagine Guerin as a smart general manager would do that.
He really is. I haven't heard that exactly. I do. Russo is very tied in with the Wild, so if he says they're 100% trading Fiala, I think that there's a good chance they're trading Fiala. But I've heard otherwise as far as my sources go there. So we'll see.
Yep.
I think that's all the time we have for now, folks. It is Thursday, so we'll be back in tomorrow. But remember, will we? We're not sure.
We'll be back on Monday.
Right, we won't be back tomorrow. We have other commitments that are going to take everybody out tomorrow. But we will be back with a rumor chart update tomorrow for sure on Hockey Buzz. Check that out. Kevin's notebook is coming out. I think tomorrow, probably, Kevin, right?
Nope. This afternoon. That's always my favorite article of the week on any website anywhere. So check that out. And remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you soon.